Google never had this problem. During my time, it didn't. And this was a new environment for me to walk into. In a way, I was excited about having to figure this out, figure out how to monetize. I was tasked with that. But also, if I don't, we might not make it.
What would happen if we just told the truth?
Welcome to TruthWorks, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of leadership and work.
And what needs to change? I'm Jessica Neal.
And I'm Patty McCord.
Our journey together started in HR, but trust us, it's evolved into something wild, honest, and well, a bit rebellious.
So throw out the handbook. We're here to redefine rules to work for us, not against us.
Let's dive into another episode. Welcome to another episode of TruthWorks. I'm Jessica Neal, your host, and today I have a very special guest. So I'm just excited to talk to you about all the things, but we have Cem Kansu. Or no, you actually told me to say Kansu, and now I said Kansu is better, but I said the first name right, which is good. But Cem is someone who knows how to make learning addictive in the best way possible. He does this in the best way possible. So he is a longtime product leader, and he's currently at Duolingo, and he has helped scale this app into like a cultural phenomenon, right? Like everybody does Duolingo, including myself and my 6-year-old son who is learning Korean. So my son's half Korean, and
very cool.
His dad doesn't speak to him in Korean enough, and so we're supplementing with Duolingo. But
we're
Cem,
happy to help either way.
Well, thank you. Cem, welcome to the show. I want you to tell people a little bit about your background, because before Duolingo, you had a whole life. You're not just defined by Duolingo, but you were at Google, you were at Jawbone, you've been a product leader. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are.
Definitely. And I'm very happy to be here. When I've listened to a few of your episodes, it always felt like an incredibly honest conversation that isn't just about product. And this is a new territory for me. So I'm excited to test myself out talking about all these topics we're about to enter. But my story is I actually use almost the same words when I talk about my Duolingo time, which is I do feel like I grew up at Duolingo. So I now am the head of product here at Duolingo. I lead the product management team, and I'm involved with all of our product decisions. I've been here 9 years. I just passed my 9-year mark, actually. Thank you. And I started in 2016 when Duolingo was about 55 employees, and I was the third PM in the company. And I have worked on all of our revenue products for about 5 to 6 years. I built our subscription products. That really took a life on its own, defined our business model. And then for the past roughly 4 years, I've been leading the product team. And I've seen Duolingo through various phases. Duolingo was 50-ish people, and now it's about 1,000 employees. So things have certainly changed and grown. And then before Duolingo, right before I was in business school, during business school, I had a short stint at Jawbone. I don't know if people remember anymore.
I know they probably don't, but I remember Jawbone because what was the name of the CEO?
Oh my God, now that you asked, I'm blanking.
Because I got introduced to him and we really liked each other. I was still at Netflix. Let's see, because it's driving me crazy. I'm looking it up right now.
Okay.
Hussein Rahman?
Hussein Rahman. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
So God, this is so long ago. But anyways, he and I think it was Andreessen Horowitz.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, you got to go meet him. And I went up to San Francisco and we hung out, and we literally we're supposed to spend 45 minutes together. I think we spent 5 hours together.
Wow.
And I really liked
He would have really long meetings. I do remember that.
But anyways, he gave me one of the jam boxes because that's what Jawbone.
Such a beautiful device.
Yes, and I still have it today. It still works.
I still have it too. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really good technology. So for those of you that ever had a Jambox, Jawbone was the company that made it. But I think that company, it was just a hard, It's a hard business, consumer electronics.
Hardware is hard. Consumer hardware is really hard. And Jawbone, to their credit, was an amazing design company. They were in a way very similar to Apple. They would kind of come into a category, build a very well-designed version of that hardware. They did it with Bluetooth headphones and then fitness wearables and also the Jambox, the Bluetooth speakers. The challenge with hardware, though, there's a lot of race to the bottom with these devices. So anyway, I think eventually that was the difficult turn of events for Jawbone, where they would try to sell the well-designed version for $200, where someone else was selling it for $20. That's doing the same thing.
Right. Yeah, and it is no longer.
It is no longer, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes.
And I was, for the record, I was only there for an internship, but it did teach me a lot about design, and that's kind of eventually what led me to come to Duolingo, which is another company that cared a lot about design.
Yeah.
So it had a lot of formational impact on what I chose to do. But anyway, so that was during my time in business school. And then before then, I was at Google for about 4 years. And I was not actually a product person there. I was doing business development for Google's ads business. So my career switched from business development to what I really wanted to do, which I realized over my time at Jawbone, product. And then if you go way back, I'm originally from Turkey. That's where I grew up. And hence my name, spelled with a C, but pronounced like a G. That's the Turkish C.
Well, you're a gem.
Yes.
Yes. And no one can deny it. Okay. Especially Duolingo. So I want to talk a little bit about, like, you come into Duolingo. It's 55 employees. And I'm guessing the product is pretty in its infancy, if you will, right? Like, not very mature, not the Duolingo it is today. So when you walk in and you're part of this team, like, what did you do? What was obvious to you? What wasn't?
I think if I look back at that time, it's filled with excitement and anxiety and at its maximum.
How many, well, I guess you didn't have subscribers then, but how many, like, do you call them learners? What do you call them?
That term learners solidified over time. At the time, we would just say daily active users or daily active learners. We had 3 million daily actives when I started. Right now, we have about 50. So we've grown a lot. And the product, you are right, was way earlier in its evolution. I was really excited because there was just so much to do. Clearly, the company's mission was quite well defined, and that's part of the reason, actually, majority of the reason I wanted to help this mission, which is provide access to education. That's what Duolingo stands for. It broke through, if you go way back in time on what language learning products look like the Rosetta Stones of the world, these were really expensive CDs, basically, is what they were. And it was a kind of inaccessible way to learn a language, especially if you think about learning English in certain parts of the world or like in countries where English is not the dominant language. It opens massive economic opportunities. And Duolingo's mission was built around trying to help people have access to education that's easily accessible through mobile or web, and it's free to use. So that was really exciting to me, and that fueled my excitement coming in. The anxiety part was also quite real, because when I started, we were very much a startup and we were making zero revenue. So if you were an investor looking at this business, you would quite be concerned in the sense that, will they ever figure this out? And the way a startup operates and communicates is we would say things like, okay, we have this much money in the bank, and this will last us 14 months. So runway is 14 months. And that I had never worked in an environment where it was like, okay, if we don't figure it. Yeah, exactly. Google never had this problem, or at least during my time, it didn't. And this was a new environment for me to walk into, because I also felt, in a way, I was excited about having to figure this out, like figure out how to monetize. I was tasked with that. But also, if I don't, we might not make it. And that was a mix of emotions. Yeah.
So then you have all this pressure. You have to figure out how to monetize. Do you just start testing? Is that what you started to do?
At its core, yes. We started testing, and in hindsight, everything looks super clear on it should have been freemium. Of course, we want to provide education for free and monetize the bells and whistles, but at the time, it really wasn't. Actually, the common advice for any education product, honestly, it still is you have to put everything behind a paywall. So meaning if you're monetizing educational content, there's really not a lot of creative business models. Lock it behind the paywall, you charge a subscription. Duolingo wanted to be on the other side of history where we will provide educational content for free, but then we'll figure something out on how to make money was kind of the current state of things. So we started testing ads, we started testing different in-app purchases, and we started testing a subscription model, which honestly, I don't even know why people bought our first version, but people did, and that gave us a lot of fuel because the subscription, we had very minimal ad load. It removed ads. It gave you offline access, which most people didn't use. And then there was a third feature that said you get to support Duolingo. And a lot of people bought it. They loved Duolingo and they wanted to contribute. And they gave us a lot of fuel that we thought, okay, even with a bare minimum set of features, this is a good business model that's working. Let's test more. And as we experimented, we started seeing things that are working. I will call out of course, there was a lot of uncertainty and we figured out as we tested and got data. The biggest challenge I felt like we had at the time was convincing internally that this was the right thing to do, because a lot of people until that moment in time that joined the company had this idea that Duolingo is free forever. And anything that goes against that felt like we were breaking an agreement we made, even though we knew we had to survive as a business.
I know. I was at Coursera. So I left Netflix for a brief amount of time and then came back, and I was at Coursera and we had the same challenge. And because we gave it away for free and everyone had joined for the mission. And then it was like, but we have to make money. Right. And it was really hard to navigate. So
it is really hard.
How did you guys do it?
I would say, I think the approach that ended up working is one, of course, our CEO, Luis, he was quite aligned in testing and figuring out what works. So we had to at least have alignment to test. But as we tested, we were able to alleviate some of the worries on this. Anything we do with monetization ruins our product was the general, like, let's not touch this vibe of the company. But the data showed that users didn't run away, actually. Like, retention was fine. Our user love was fine. And we were able to quantify what that means rather than this dark cloud that was pointed at as monetizing Duolingo. That's one. Two, I think it became clear also as time went on that if you want to actually maximize your impact as a company, it does actually help a lot to have your own revenue. Like, otherwise you could become a nonprofit, but it was quite clear eventually that if we became a nonprofit and decided not to monetize, the impact we're trying to have on providing access to education would actually be quite handicapped. So I think that was one, the kind of the emotional appeal of monetization actually helps us. And two, backing that up with the data we're seeing, which is like our users are not running away. They're actually happy to pay for a certain set of features.
Yeah, people like to pay for things that are useful for them.
Yes, turns out.
Turns out they do. Having worked for a subscription business for most of my career, subscriptions really work.
They really do. They really do. I mean, I think you said it, and it's not rocket science. If people enjoy using a service, paying a continuous subscription is a quite logical way to get that service.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you figure out this subscription thing. You kind of unlock monetization for the company. You were at 3 million. Now you're at 50 million. I'm guessing your job has changed quite a bit, because how many people were you leading when you were at 3 million?
0. I was leading myself, if I could even say that.
I was managing myself. Yes.
And unsuccessfully, probably, but yes. Yeah, so my job evolved quite a bit. It was, again, I love that you say this because I say this a lot. I really feel like that's why I grew up at Duolingo. It started with, I was responsible for a portfolio of product features and certainly no other humans. And then I moved on to what we call a team lead role. That was kind of my first step into leading at least a group. That wasn't direct management, but it was more deciding the kind of the direction of a team. And then that eventually turned into managing some other product managers. And then that turned into what we call like an area, which is a group of teams, leading a group of teams direction and managing the product managers on those teams. And then that kind of grew. As the company grew, the scope of that grew. And then now, as I guess for the past 4 years, I'm managing an org, which is the product management org. So that's certainly all of these stages looked very different. And I would say there was a lot of trial and error on things I messed up, and I continue to. So that's been the journey, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I think great leaders are self-aware. That's
At least we have that.
Yeah, that's self-aware. So how many people work for you now?
We have 55 product managers.
Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot. So you went from yourself to 55. So
Exactly.
that's pretty good. So culturally, I think this is true, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you all are known for like ruthless focus. Like focus. We had a similar DNA at Netflix. But tell me a little bit about that and maybe the pros and cons and how you stay focused.
I think we do care a lot about, I think the exact operating principle we have written and communicated and honestly stand by is prioritize ruthlessly. So it's certainly ingrained in how we make decisions. And it's not one of those operating principles that sits on a wall and looks cool. It really, we say this a lot.
But you don't just say it, you do it actually.
We say it and we do it. I would say maybe two things. One of them is if you have such a grand goal to solve. For us, it is one, teaching you a language fluently. And now we've actually expanded our problem set to teach you a language, math, music, chess. So these are very hard subjects to teach if you're starting at zero or anywhere, and to get you to be fully fluent in any of these topics. We just have a very hard problem to solve. It is easy to get lost in the details. So it matters so much to pick the one thing that matters the most in making progress. So what turned out for us as a company, at least in the early days, now it's branched out as we grew, but the one thing that mattered the most for succeeding in teaching a language was making it fun. So when we came to that insight, majority of our efforts, and still today, honestly, is focused on making teaching fun. With self-taught learning, as opposed to, for example, if you need to sit in a classroom for an hour, that's a very different environment than self-taught learning or self-chosen path of learning. You're competing with the most fun things on your phone. That could be Netflix, that could be Instagram, that could be any game you can play. So unless it's really fun, we don't have a big business. So we spent a lot of time basically investing in and prioritizing how to make things fun. And that's why Duolingo is the way it is today. And it's funny, we get criticized for it sometimes, being like, oh, this is a game. Well, it's meant to be as fun as a game, but it's actually going to teach you the thing you came here for.
Yeah.
And that was an example of, for example, ruthless prioritization. And the kind of the fundamental insight behind it is you can learn a language in many different ways. You can learn a language by reading a textbook, but nobody does that because that's not fun at all.
It's not fun. Nobody wants to learn that way. Actually, I did Rosetta Stone back in the day and I hated it. I tried to learn Korean and it was so hard. And it was like,
it's so hard.
I don't know what the method of Rosetta Stone is called, but it would show me like 4 pictures and it would say the word in Korean. And then I don't know what they're saying, but it was like, there's a pic, because I don't know Korean, and there's a picture of a horse, a picture of a frog, a picture of a duck, and a picture of, a snake or something. And then you just and then you're wrong. And then you finally figure out that word actually is horse. And I was like, this isn't working. I told my husband, I said, I don't think I'm going to learn Korean.
You gave up eventually.
I did. We had just gotten married and I was trying and I was like, I can't do it.
Well, we talked about business models. I think this is a challenge of that business model because you already had bought the CDs. So there's not a lot of incentive for continuous improvement of how they teach Korean in a way.
Right.
So
yeah, because it was back in the day when we had CDs, you know?
Yes.
That dates me. Well, thank you. Okay. So we were actually pretty ruthless at Netflix too. And I think, our goal was to entertain the world. Right. And so in order to entertain the world, you have to have the best content. And the content isn't necessarily what you think is, entertaining. It's what the world thinks, is entertaining. And then you have to be able to find things easily to entertain yourself. The uploading of the video can't take forever. Like it's got to be seamless, all those things. And so I like that. But I think that a lot of companies don't have that focus. Right.
They don't.
And I think it obviously is great for us. Obviously, it's helping you. But why do teams, organizations have such a hard time focusing?
It's a great question. And I don't know if I have the perfect answer, but I would say maybe two things are hard. One is it's always easy in hindsight for me to even tell the story and say, oh, yeah, we had this one insight, we built product around it, and it worked really well. But I think getting to that was a quite messy process, meaning we were testing and invest. I mean, it's also not like this, we did one thing, but it was one insight that ended up changing the trajectory of Duolingo's growth. And I think it's not simple to get to that insight, and you end up chasing a lot of dead ends until you get to that insight. And I think I feel like the formula that ends up working is really fast iteration cycles on your hypotheses until you land on the one or two or a few that is really going to drive the business. But I think getting there is always going to look messy. It's going to take some time. But I think the way to get to the end state, which is clarity on what really is going to make a difference in the business, happens through testing various hypotheses. Whether that's honestly a product challenge, an org challenge, a business challenge, whatever it might be, it really requires trying. Like action really gets you the insight rather than whiteboarding and writing strategy docs. I feel like people make the mistake of doing the work that is not the actual action, but the discussion of the action. And that really doesn't move your thinking forward. That's kind of what I believe, at least, is the solution to confusion.
I think you're right. Like, as I'm thinking about it, I think there's a lot of discussing and analyzing and thinking, and sometimes there's not a lot of doing. And I think a lot of humans, but leaders and organizations are afraid of risk and failure. We were we were a huge A/B testing culture at Netflix, but we also were like, let's just try it. And if it doesn't work, we'll know it doesn't work, right? And like, if you don't try, you don't know. And when you're in these businesses, like I was and you are, nobody knows the answer. You're making it up as you go along. You don't know. You got to try.
I think that's why building a culture of experimentation is more important than the specific experiments you decide to run, because it compounds, right? It's like, I think we can debate, for example, the best way to run a subscription experiment, but it's way more productive if we build a team that can do that at large numbers, that can run good hypotheses. And in a span of 6 months, rather than us debating what's best, we will cover way more ground by letting the system kind of experiment.
Yeah. So how, as a leader of a system of experimentation, how do you get your team to be on board with that? How do you foster it?
I love this question. And I feel like we love talking about this a lot internally, at least. One of them is make it easy. Like, if remove any friction for anyone in the company as much as possible. At least let's take product experimentation, which I also now, my new favorite thing is org experiments, which is something I enjoy now. Making org changes not like concrete and stone, but more like an experiment. But anyway, let me get to that.
I want to talk about this. I like that. This is right up my alley.
I assumed. But I think one is reduce friction. For us, we built our entire A/B testing tools ourselves for our use cases, and we made it quite easy for any team to go run an experiment. So that at least makes it easy to get started. 2 is encouraging teams to be experimental, as long as we align on kind of what designs we're showing the user or what change we're going to make. As long as we're aligned.
Yeah, you can't change the logo.
Exactly. Don't change the logo. Or we have like a bunch of design principles, like Duo has to look a certain way. He needs to be unhinged, whatever it is. There's many of these. As long as we're aligned on the design guidelines and what we're going to do, teams should be running many experiments. And honestly, it's a bit of a social currency culturally to run. A team that runs 100 experiments is kind of cooler than the team that runs 70 is also the culture in a way, because it's a good thing. And I think that's maybe kind of the culture thing, which is encouraging teams to be experimental.
Yeah. Is there something that you also do around failure? Because a lot of the experiments fail, right? Like you
half
do
of them fail on average.
Like you do 100 of them, and half of them aren't great, and some of them are just okay. Like it's like, well, a little bit, but not enough.
I think it is completely expected that half of experiments will fail. So, and you mentioned failures. I feel like we don't blink an eye when an experiment fails. I think that at least for product experiments, the lens we have collectively created is if the experiment failed, the only thing to do is look at why. And then if there's a new experiment we can run that would fix the why on why it failed. If not, throw it out. There's nothing to do here. Let's move on to the next hypothesis. I feel like that's rather than just, celebrating failures is certainly important because trial is important, but I feel like our lens is rather than celebration or not, it's what can we learn from this? And once we've extracted that, let's move on to the next. So to sound like maybe like a completely always on the grind mentality, I feel like that's how we view it. It's like, okay, what did we learn? We ran this thing. The insight was maybe the color should be red, not green. Okay, let's try 3 different shades of red. That's now the new experiment to run.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's talk about these org experiments. I am curious. Tell me.
Well, I've realized, I think, making org changes is always painful, especially for someone that is responsible for the health of an organization. Doing reorgs, nobody loves to do. However, this is a kind of a mental trick in a way, which is if you call something a pilot that we're going to try for a while, or if you call it an org experiment, everyone is, number one, way more open to it. 2, it gives you the chance that if it doesn't work out, because org experiments also half the time don't work out, it's a very easy reversion because you never said, I am putting, A person here to lead B. You never committed to it. So it makes it way easier to try something. And that's why I propose a lot of org changes as experiments. Not everything, of course, but a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it honestly gets you to try more things, to learn more from those experiments, rather than I think when I first honestly stepped into my job, every org change felt like, okay, I got to convince 18 people. They all have to say yes. And then we are going to commit. We're going to do it next quarter. It became a whole thing where most things can be just tried. And if it works, we make it permanent. If it doesn't, we revert.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's actually how I approach things at Netflix. And I remember, back in the day and, Patty was with me too when we were doing these things. But, when Patty and the team and I were like getting rid of vacation, right? It was like, you can't get rid of vacation. Nobody's going to take vacation. It's like, and everybody was sort of freaking out. And so this was the sort of early on in our thing. But we were like, it's just like a product test. We're going to test it.
Let's test what happens.
And if we're wrong, like we'll put vacation back. It's not, we can put it back, but we need to try and let's just try it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's okay. We learned. It's the same. I think we tried to, because at the time, most of the company were engineers and product professionals, and they don't like a lot of change on the org stuff. They just don't. They don't like it. But we tried to get them to see that it was just like their job. Like we had to innovate. Yeah, it's the same. We have to innovate just like you guys are. You're our product, be it what you want or not.
Whether you like it or not.
You're the product, so we're going to try, we're going to test. But I love that. So, okay. So tell us about, well, maybe, because we have a lot of leaders that listen to this. So tell us about maybe an org experiment that you've done recently that did work.
Let me see. This is maybe not an exact org change, but it is a process change that we tried and it ended up working, which is we have these, I guess like most companies, these meetings called product review where they are scheduled, where teams show up with the product proposal and a bunch of senior people, that includes me, our CEO, our head of design. We discuss the proposal to say, okay, should we do this or not? The pilot or experiment we wanted to try was these meetings, in some percent of the time, would go in very wild directions. Like we would discuss, our CEO would throw something, we would chase that, and then the team would walk out of a 20 to 30 minute meeting being like, I'm not sure what we aligned on. So this needed to change, but it was, since we all cared about the product, we all had opinions, and it was sometimes circular discussion. So what we decided to do is really tighten the format, make it 10 minutes. It needs to follow a strict order, who speaks first, and the CEO has to go last. A lot of people were kind of averse to it because it was like, okay, 10 minutes, can we actually cover all the details? Not a lot of people were on board, but we said, we're just going to try it for 3 months. Let's just try it for 3 months. I would even sometimes take the opposing view of my own proposal to be like, I'm not even sure if it'll work, and then we'll revert it by the next quarter. And we tried it, and of course there was some bizarreness in the format. 10 minutes is really short for some discussions, but eventually it worked out beautifully. And we didn't even discuss reverting it because everyone was like, this is way better.
Right. Everybody saw it. Yeah.
And then we didn't have to debate for months on like, is this the right format? Is this the right attendees? It was just like, we just tried it and it worked. So it wasn't exactly answering your org question, but it was a process change that quite affected how, for example, product managers approach product review.
I love that. I think this is something that I think about a lot. The way we spend our time at work isn't experimented on enough, right?
So true.
It's almost like monotony. Like, we know there are terrible meetings, but nobody will cancel them.
Yes.
We know that there are meetings that we've had for years that we don't need to have anymore, but everybody keeps going to them.
Inertia is real. Inertia is very real. Yeah.
And I had a guy on the podcast, and he's like, it was interesting. He was like, and this goes back to your 10-minute thing. He's like, if a meeting's on the calendar, do you know if for an hour, how long will it last? And I was like, an hour. He's like, if a meeting's on the calendar for 20 minutes, how will it last?
Exactly.
20 minutes. So it's like, if it's 10 minutes.
It's 10 minutes. That's
10 minutes. Right? Like, so I think, I love that you guys did that. And we did a lot of that experimentation at Netflix too, because again, like, I think if you can have operational excellence, like you can achieve a lot. But I'm so perplexed why companies are unwilling to go there. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's comfortable. I don't know. But it's like everybody knows it sucks and everybody knows it can be better, but yet we just keep doing it. It's just, I don't know.
It's
what do you
so
think?
interesting. I think inertia is real. It is easier to sit through consistent low pain than to acknowledge and maybe have an awkward conversation and say, I would like to kill this meeting. So it's way easier to sit through consistent pain, even though if you think about it cumulatively, it's way worse. It is hard to raise your hand and have an acute, awkward conversation. I think most people avoid that. And in avoiding that, you end up with a lot of meeting time, for example, that isn't well used.
Yeah, there's so much wasted money and time on like things that just don't matter. And it's like, I just wish if companies could actually, I do think that there is a problem with people raising their hand, right? And
Yeah.
like, and sometimes it's fear or sometimes people like, I don't know. I don't care. I don't care enough to raise my hand. I'll just sit through the meeting. But I do think people need to do that. But I think leaders, and probably Louis is pretty good at this, like fostering, like Reed was really good at this. Like he would see these like things bubbling up in the organization, like miscommunication, misalignment, slowness. We did not want any bureaucracy or, and it's not like we didn't have process, but we didn't want stupid process, right? But the moment we started to see that stuff creeping, like it was anxiety for him, and he would like get in the system and tinker and experiment and try and kill and get rid of. And I mean, kill sounds so terrible, but sometimes you have to kill things because they'll kill you. They'll kill you if you don't kill them.
I mean, the most important thing as people who lead orgs is the most important resource you have is leadership bandwidth. Anything that chips away at that, even if it chips away 2%, you have to be extremely questioning of, am I spending my 2% on this correctly? And I think sometimes people just forget that is reality. It's just like, it's another 20-minute meeting. I'll just attend it. Well, it's every week. So in the course of a year, you spent quite a bit of your time on this thing. What return did you get? And I think you are like, Luis is also excellent at this. If something is just not doing the job it was intended to, the first thing to discuss is, should we kill this today? Is how it goes. And I stand by that too. I do this. The one trick I've learned, not trick, but I think a healthy habit with meetings is most of my meetings, scheduled to recur forever. They always have an end date. So that is a very good habit I've found to revisit if everything should continue or should we reschedule them because it was so valuable. Rescheduling is a way better way to opt in because you're re-opting in than just letting it recur on your calendar.
I like that. That is a very good trick. Listen up, leaders. Put an end date on that meeting. Okay. Maybe this is something that some of the folks on the call might want to know, but is there a time like when, as a leader for product, where you really had an idea, maybe it was against best practices or whatever you want to call it. I hate that term. Who said they were best is what I want to know.
Who decided?
Who decided, right? I want to know this person who decides that all these practices are the best. But was there a time where you really you were the kind of lone person out there thinking that this was a great idea and you pushed for it anyways?
Maybe there's a couple initiatives in recent history that I've certainly been part of pushing really hard on that wasn't obvious at the time. I'll pick one which I think is now quite famous as part of Duolingo's Unhinged brand, which is, I don't know if you use our widget for your app, which is basically this 4 app icon size widget you can add either on your iOS device or Android. And it's mainly used with like weather apps where you kind of look at your weather in a bigger view, or historically it's like you put some information there like your stock price, whatever it is. But it was never quite used as a fun way to communicate your brand or your app. And that was not a thing that was done. I had this hypothesis that we have such a fun brand and a lot of people with loyal habits to their streaks. The streak is one of the most important things to our user base. It is the social currency you communicate it to other users with. You say, I have a 100-day streak, and someone else trumps you with their 1,000-day streak, whatever it might be. But it is an important thing. And I really wanted our user base to install our widget, which would have your streak number in there, and Duo would present that number. It's a fairly simple thing. It was not fully believed that this would be a big thing for Duolingo, but now almost 50% of our DAUs use our widget. So it's actually a quite high adoption.
I don't know if I have it.
I would highly encourage you to install it. It's very fun. We put a lot of funny Duo moments in there, and you can showcase your widget on your homepage if that's also what you would like to do. And if you don't have a streak, you got to get a streak so that you can showcase it.
Yeah. Well, my kid uses my phone.
Okay.
With Duolingo.
Excellent. That solves it.
So it's really his streak. So I can't take credit for it. But I'm going to turn on the widget because I don't think I'm just on the app. I don't think I have it. So
okay. Well, without going into more of the details of the product feature, it was not common practice, and widgets were not used for fun stuff. Meaning your owl mascot wouldn't come and show his butt. Now that this fits our rating.
Right.
On the widget, our widget does. So we took a completely different stance for an entertaining widget, which was not conventional. It certainly wasn't best practice for any app to do, but I think it really ended up resonating with our audience because they love Duo and they love their streak, and that's what the widget is all about. And as is similar to what we talked about with testing, we learned what works. We tested a bunch of things in our widget, and eventually this is the realm of things that was really exciting for our users. That was one of those things I really stood behind. I think most of the company did not believe this would do anything.
Yes, but it did, and you stood for it. So what's the advice for someone in a similar situation? Was it just determination, or, how'd you stay strong against the naysayers?
I think maybe 2 things. One of them is, for some things, if you have reached high conviction that that is the right thing to do, you should obviously do your best to stand by it, even if most other high judgment people believe it might not be the right thing to do. So that's one. I think if you have high conviction, don't stay silent. Now, there's always, when I say this, the obvious question that I get is, well, how do I get high conviction on an unproven thing? And I think depending on what that thing is, there's probably more specifics. With product, the best way is to prototype and visualize it, and you test it on yourself. If you love it and you can see other people around you loving it, that is an extremely good sign that there's another group of people in the world that will love the thing you're building. So with product, you test it on yourself. Probably with anything, test it on yourself. If you've convinced yourself that that is the right thing to do, that is a great high conviction starting point. And with org changes too, right? If you want to do a 10-minute meeting for others, do a 10-minute meeting on yourself first to see if it works. So that's where I would start. Grow conviction, step 1. Step 2, if you have done that, obviously stand by it. And step 3, acknowledge that, again, half of any experiment will not work. So even if you think you have high conviction and you stood by it, there's a chance of failure at the end. But that's normal, meaning you will stand by 10 things and 5 of them will not work out. And that's certainly that my track record might even be worse by now. If I stood by 10 things, probably 4 of them, 3 of them worked and 6 of them did not. So,
Yeah.
and that's honestly just how it
Yeah,
goes.
I always thought about like really great product leaders were like really great baseball hitters. Because the big hitters have more misses than they have big hits. But the big hits can increase retention by, 5% or, you get a home run and you win the game.
I mean, that's very true. At bats is what matters is I think how it goes for business or product. If you get more at bats, one, your muscle of hitting these home runs get better. So you get the skill development, but 2, you get more chances at hitting home runs. So I think, yeah, the baseball analogy we use a lot too, actually.
Do you? Okay, good. Yeah, I always thought about it that way. So, okay, we're running out of time, but I want to talk to you a little bit about AI because everybody's talking about AI. But I think that there is a very cool opportunity with learning with AI. And I know you have to be thinking of this. You probably are doing it. But is there anything that you can kind of share with us or any things you think listeners should just be paying attention to on this front?
Definitely. I would say Duolingo uses AI heavily. Let me start there. And if I was to categorize the 3 ways it's been transformational to Duolingo is 1 is content creation. So Duolingo, if you think about all the things we teach more than 40 languages. We teach math, music, and chess. Creating the content that is effective and fun is an extreme task. It's a lot of work, and now a lot of our content creation is helped with AI because we can do it at much higher scale and at higher quality even. So that's 1. So content creation is quite transformed by using AI. This, by the way, Duolingo sometimes has been in the news of like AI is replacing Duolingo's employee base. That is I just want to debunk that myth. AI has really helped our employees be more productive, and that's honestly the end of our story there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so funny because, a lot of companies like the Amazon layoff recently and everybody's like, oh, it's AI, take it. I'm like, no,
that's not the story, actually.
It's not happening. Like AI isn't taking the jobs,
Yes.
it's enhancing things from a productivity perspective. Right?
Exactly. And I think we're seeing that. Like content creation, we can do 10x more, but with the same number of employees, and we love that. The other thing we're doing is feature creation. So with language specifically, it is such a good experience to be able to practice speaking. And before LLMs were this capable, we didn't have great technology to provide speaking features where you can freely practice conversation. Now we can. So we use LLMs to create a lot of conversation practice. It's a feature that we call video call, where you call one of our characters, Lily is her name, and you can talk to her and she adjusts to your exact proficiency level of the language that you're learning. So we're solving problems we couldn't do before with AI.
Which is amazing. Yeah. Yeah. When my son is like speaking into the phone in his little 6-year-old voice, sometimes doesn't understand what he's saying, but it's more because he can't, he's not pronouncing things.
To be fair, we have to get
Fully.
better at speech recognition because it's not only your son, because it's a language you're not proficient in. So you say gibberish some of the time, and that's a hard speech recognition problem to solve.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure AI will help with that.
AI will certainly help with that. So this is kind of my second category, which is we're able to solve new technical problems we couldn't solve before. Great conversation practice, speech recognition, and I'm sure there'll be others in the future. And then the third, I would say, is general productivity. I think our writing is better now because you can have AI proofread whatever you're doing. I use it as a writing assistant every day. And for example, our engineers are using it for helping their coding. We are able to do prototypes easier. So anyway, every function uses it differently, but really productivity has gone up a bit as well. Those three really probably summarize most of the stuff we're doing with AI. We see it as a complete accelerant to everything we're doing. So I'm very excited to see what else we can do with all of these. So yeah.
I'm excited too. I can't wait to experience it. Okay, one last thing, and then we'll get into career confession. So I always ask my guests to give a little advice to the listeners, like anything that you want to leave them with, a little nugget of something. So what is your advice to our listeners today?
I think I want to underline something we said in one of the questions you asked me, which is how do you get to insight? And I think my answer was somewhat along the realms of do action. Action will get to insight that you need. We have this operating principle that I guess famously I said so many times that we eventually made it an operating principle. We say ship it. And that is meant to basically underline the fact that go act on the thing rather than debate the thing. And I honestly, it's a device that has served me really well in my career. It's something that I repeat a lot for that reason. Just take action, do the thing, or in the product realm of things, that is just like ship it, give it to users, you'll learn more. That is one advice I will say, because I think in a lot of, leaders are your audience here. It's so easy to sit and debate in rooms because that's human nature to get consensus on opinion, but it's way faster to act on it and see what happens with it.
So true. Ship it, people. Come on, just ship it. Okay, so we're going to roll into career confession. Okay, so I'll set it up with like a little context and then we'll get to the question. Sometimes I catch myself optimizing for numbers, daily active users, retention, curves, monetization, metrics, before asking, are we still serving real people's growth? So my question is, how do you lead a mission-driven product team, especially under pressure to monetize and scale, without losing empathy, authenticity, and long-term user trust?
Whoa, I love this question. It feels very targeted even.
It does. It does. This is right for you.
I do love this question. I will say maybe there's two approaches that are very important to guide this ship that is trying to balance business objective, that is like revenue growth, DAU growth, to maybe the mission objective of whatever that company might be doing. For Duolingo, that is providing access to great education. One is, can you put a metric behind the mission that you're trying to solve? That at least puts metric power and business power behind that thing. Sometimes this is not possible, but if it is a thing that you can put a metric around, for example, if the mission of the company is to, I don't know, pick any mission, it's like that we would like to help starving children, then okay, a metric is how many children have we helped? Is there a metric you can put on the business and can you measure your impact towards that? For us, for example, one of the hard parts that we have struggled with is it is hard to put a metric on, we can put number of users and revenue, but it is hard to put a metric on how much we're teaching. Teaching is hard to accumulate on a graph and put, here's how much teaching we've done. That's really hard to do. I think then you lean into your judgment and your qualitative judgment. The thing that I think helps a lot is, one, obviously your leaders must be bought in. Every leader in the company from the top to any level is completely bought in on the mission. And two, they're aligned on what their product achieves. Because if you just optimize for numbers, you're going to end up with a product that is probably not doing the right thing, because numbers will stray you somewhere. You need good judgment. A good judgment we reach by trying to teach ourselves a language. Like, I'm trying to learn Spanish. I'm trying to get better at chess, music. And this gives us a great sense of, are we headed in the right direction? Are we helping our users reach their goals? I think that judgment is critical. And I think one way to get that is applied on yourself is what I would recommend.
We call that, I'm sure you do too. You have to eat your own dog food.
Eat your own dog food. Exactly.
You do. That's a great, great, great answer. And I just love everything that you said. And I loved having you as a guest on the show. It's been so fun. I hope it was fun for you.
I loved being here. This was really fun.
Okay, good. Well, I know our listeners are going to love this. So, Jim, thank you so much. And keep doing what you're doing. We love it.
We're going to continue shipping it. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks for listening to TruthWorks.